Hi, I'm Julie. Welcome back to my studio. We're continuing our summer tutorial series with a painting of a dragonfly today. This is the painting that we're going to be doing. And dragonflies remind me of summertime because I often have them zipping through my garden, or we'll go to parks with ponds and water lilies, ideally, and there will be dragonflies flying around the water. So I thought this would be the perfect kind of lighthearted summertime painting tutorial. So let's go ahead and get started. The supplies that we're going to be using for this painting are a piece of paper. I'm using mixed media paper, so it's kind of like a heavy cardstock consistency. A pencil for sketching, a round number 8 brush, so it's just sort of a smaller, on the smaller side, round brush, a little number 1 liner brush, and then the colors, we have our white, cadmium yellow medium, ultramarine blue, and phthalo green. And then I've just got water and paper towels. And I have a picture that I'm going to be working from on the iPad. I like having it on the iPad because I can zoom in on details and things like that. And I can have multiple images and just swipe through. But we'll be using this image as inspiration for our sketch. And then we'll kind of vary the colors in the wings to make it a little bit more colorful. So when we're sketching our dragonfly, we want to try to center it like right about here. So I'm just going to draw nice and light. And we're going to center our shapes. So like a bigger oval head, right about there. And then we're going to put the little nose on him. And then we've got the abdomen, which is sort of 2 shapes here. Hopefully I'm using the right words for that. There we go. And then I believe this is the thorax, which is just going to be one long oval. Okay, and then our wings, we're going to make them out of some oval shapes. So the wings are angled. The top wings are in this really sort of open V sort of a shape. So I'm just going to make a line to just gently guide our oval shapes to kind of try to get them to be symmetrical here. And then the other ones are going to be coming down from about here. I'm going to make these ones just a little darker. Make sure we can see them okay. Okay. So we're going to make them out of basic oval shapes, but then we're going to have to kind of finesse them a little bit, smooth them out. So we'll just start with an oval kind of like that. And then it sort of has like this bend sort of a shape. So I'm going to angle this oval up just a little bit. So that's very, very basic. Not with all the little details on it, but we'll get there. Okay, and then for these lower wings, we're going to just make sort of a fat oval there. And then this one will angle a little bit more towards the, like there's just a little bit of a change. Actually, I didn't do that one quite enough. Hold on. Let's angle it up just a bit more because it's like this upward curve. So we're going to curve this up a little bit more. There we go. I'm trying to make these about the same length. We can check them too. And then our upward. That's not perfect, but we'll smooth out our edges. So we're just gonna sort of blend these together and try to make them a little bit more like what we're seeing in the picture. And just smooth some of these shapes together. Okay, and I'm gonna erase what's in the middle here because that can get kind of distracting. And we'll just take a look at that basic shape. I feel like the top could be a little better here, so we're gonna go down. Kind of has this downward curve right there. There we go. Okay, so let's smooth this one out. And same thing, I want this to have a bit more of a downward curve to the tip of it. And then we'll smooth out that little transition there from the two shapes to going together. Okay. Let's go ahead and erase, and we can work on this. We could be working on this for a really long time. I'm gonna just get it as close as I can in a shorter amount of time. I don't wanna spend hours perfecting our wings. So we'll just get them close to what we're seeing in the photo. But we don't aim for perfection here, so we're just going to get as close as we can within reason. Okay, now one little detail on these lower wings is that they come out from the abdomen all the way up here, and they kind of have this like inward curve. I'll try to zoom in so you can see there's like this curve right here. So we're gonna add that curve and the bottom to that shape. There we go. Okay. And then we'll just smooth out these two and then curve down a little bit more. I don't want to make it too pointy. They're like a rounded sort of a point there. I think I want this to go down just a bit more here. Dip down there. There we go. Okay, and if you're having a little bit of trouble with these, do not worry. You are not alone. These shapes are tricky. They're not, like you saw, we made them out of ovals, but they take some kind of tweaking to get to look right. So if you have to keep working on them a little bit longer, don't worry about it. That is normal. This is not a simple shape. Okay. Now, this looks a little on the skinny side to me. Let's go ahead and round up this top edge. We're just going to make it a little wider. So it was looking, yeah, quite different from the other wing opposite it. Very nice. Okay, so one measuring trick that I learned to kind of see if they are a similar length is just using our pencil and putting the point at one end and then pinching at the other end. And then we can just hold it up and check. Okay, so this wing, whoops, I'm putting my finger into the paint. There we go. This wing is smaller, shorter than this one. So I'm going to shorten Do I want to shorten or lengthen? I think I'm actually going to lengthen this one just a bit. I like the length of that other wing, so we'll go ahead and just make this a bit longer to match. Okay, and then we'll do the same thing. Often I think I've drawn something very evenly and symmetrically, and then I measure and it's like, whoa, one is definitely shorter than the other one. Same thing here. Oh, we're very close. So I think I'll just shorten this one a little bit. And they don't, like I said, they do not have to be symmetrical. This is a painting, not a photograph. They do not have to be perfect. Okay. And now we can go ahead and just smooth out our body and erase the lines that are dividing it up here. Actually, I think we'll keep that line. We may or may not need that later. I think we'll erase where these shapes overlap. Kind of smooth that little dip there. Okay, the last thing we need are the legs. So there are 3 sets of legs. It's kind of hard to see in this photo, but when we look at some other photos, the legs really, 2 sets of them originate more from this upper part of the body, and then 1 set comes down lower. And I'm gonna swipe over. I have a couple other photos. Like I really like how this one shows the legs where they're kind of, those first 2 sets are like going forward. He's kind of holding onto a branch or something or a leaf. And then the back set is going backwards. And that's a pretty good depiction of what we're going for. So I'm gonna give him 2 little sets of legs at the front. And we'll just make little curving lines, and then our little feet. Whoops, that doesn't look right. There. And then we'll do a second set that's coming down kind of similarly. And these will be behind the wing, but we'll still see them because the wing is kind of see-through. And then we want this other set of legs to be coming downwards. So we'll go ahead and go kind of like that. We'll just have them come down from there. Now let's see. I have one more photo. You know what? I think I made them a little too long because here they're not really showing that far down. So let's shorten them just a little bit. They were looking a little strange. So let's have them go like about there. And we'll just sort of hint at them. There we go. Okay, so we're gonna just erase any last little bits in the wings that need fixing. And before we go ahead and paint, we are gonna draw on just a few very simple sections to the wings that we will trace with our brush and kind of outline, but we're not gonna paint an entire web of little lines. When I've tried painting that whole web of lines with black, it really does not look good to me. It looks too clunky, too heavy. We're going to go for a shimmery, light, airy look in the wings like this one. We are not going to trace every single little section of the wings with black. So, but we do need a few sections. So I'm gonna start a little higher than in the middle. And I'm just gonna do a curve that connects down into this dip up in the wing. So I'll show you on this one. So we're just gonna make like a little oval shape there. And we'll make an oval shape here. I'm gonna do it real light and then go ahead and go back and make it darker so you can see. And then I'm gonna do one little line that comes in that tiny space that's still left in the wing. And it's just gonna kind of come up and then go off and taper off right there. And on each of the wings, dragonflies have these little distinct black rectangles, basically, like right there. So we're gonna leave that there so that we can see it. And maybe like one more little line we'll paint in there. Okay, so then we're gonna copy that over here. So just sort of a line in that in-between space. And then a little line that tapers off from there. And then that little rectangle that's near the end of the wing. And we'll just color it in to remember that it's supposed to be dark. Okay, we're gonna do the same thing on this side. So we'll come from kind of the midpoint there and then down around to where it dips up, and that's gonna form, we're gonna form like an oval. Right there. And then one more line, we'll just sort of copy what we did on that other wing. Come down and connect with that oval. And then we'll just draw another line, and then we just need our little rectangle. We're going to go ahead and mix our dark color to fill in the body and do our lines with. So I don't really care for using black in my paintings. I like to just mix a dark color out of like some dark shades of paint. So I'm gonna use my Ultramarine Blue and my Phthalo Green. We're gonna mix a dark turquoisey color. So I'm gonna use just roughly half and half. And when we mix them together, because they're such dark pigments to begin with, it makes this really dark turquoise that is gonna be sort of our stand-in for black. If you have black paint and you wanna use it, that's totally fine too. I enjoy mixing my black or a black substitute from colors because I think it just brings more interesting depth to the painting rather than just using flat, plain black. So I'm gonna use my round brush and we'll fill the body and head in first. So I'm just sort of twisting my brush, trying to wring some of that extra paint out. And I'll show you what kind of color I came up with when I spread it out there. You can see it's just a dark turquoise color. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll fill in his little head. And you can definitely turn your paper any way you need to fill it in so that you don't feel like you're getting dizzy and turning around and around. I'll do my best to just go ahead and keep it straight when I'm filling in and just turn my hand different ways. I'm filling in pretty solid so that it really does read as just a dark, almost black color. I have to make sure we have a pretty good tip on the brush to get down to the end here. And if at any point when you're in the thorax, if you want to switch to your liner brush, that is fine too. If that helps you feel more comfortable getting down and keeping it narrow. I think I'm going to curve it outwards just a little bit here. There we go. I think same thing on this side. There. I'm going to just smooth out one little bit, got kind of rough on the edge. And if your paint doesn't feel like it's flowing enough, go ahead and mix in a little bit of water. You can dip in your water and just swirl it in, help it be a little bit more inky, have a bit more flow. And now I'm done with my big brush. I'm gonna go ahead and switch to the liner brush for all our little lines and details. Now, if this feels really difficult for you, if tracing lines with a liner brush just feels impossible, you can pull out a Sharpie. You could draw these lines with a black or dark colored Sharpie pen or Micron pen, any sort of waterproof pen. Feel free. If you want that really crisp, perfect look, you could definitely do that with a pen rather than a brush. I'm going to go ahead. I've had a lot of experience with a liner brush and it feels very comfortable to me just tracing lines with flowy paint. But if you feel intimidated by that or have tried, practice on a little piece and feel like it's too hard, then go ahead and just trace it with a pen. That's fine too. Because we're going to use this as our outline, but then we're going to do washes of color over these sections too. So you'll still get that beautiful painterly look. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and just trace the lines for the wings. And I just go back every once in a while when I feel like the paint is just drying up out of the brush and it's starting to get like a scraggly, scratchy line versus a nice, smooth, flowing line. This is something that you have a pretty steady hand for. But I kind of enjoy it. I enjoy tracing these lines. And I'm not going for perfect. Of course, there's no perfect, smooth little line. I'm just going for good enough. And even if it gets like the width gets a little bit different there, I'm not worrying too much about it because those little imperfections, we're not going to really notice in the end. We're going to have lots of beautiful details in the wings. Okay, so that little rectangle, that was that darker black little rectangle there I'm going to put in. Okay, so let's move on to this side. I'm going any direction really that helps me feel like my hand is the steadiest. And again, you can definitely turn the page if you need to. I generally feel like pulling is easier for me than kind of drawing away. So that's what I'm trying to do mostly, I think, is pull towards myself. All right, and then we'll put our little rectangle in right here. All right, time for the bottom wings. This is fun. Ooh, going down this little curve. And when there's that dip in, I can kind of lift up, like use this as a single stroke and then lift up and then start a new stroke where that dip is. And that helps break up the length of how far you're having to go before you lift up your brush. So I'm going to do that same thing here. We'll do that one separately, and then we'll do this curve separately, single brush strokes there. And then stroke, and then reposition the hand, and stroke. And I even need to do this curve separately because it's hard to brush up sometimes. I like to go down more, so I'll start at the top and go down and kind of connect in. Okay. Oh yeah, I didn't do all the lines in this one, so I'll go back. And if you don't stick on your pencil lines, if they end up showing, you can always go back. We're going to go back and erase it once it's dry and get rid of all those little lines. Now that I'm looking at it, this rectangle, or not rectangle, oval is way bigger than this one, but that's okay. Too late to change it now. We're just going to roll with it. Okay, now it's just time for the legs. So I like to use my pinky sometimes to kind of balance me on the page, give me like a little bit of a steadiness. And then I kind of get up with my, kind of like I'm holding a pencil, and I get up on my little pinky and draw with the brush. All right, our little back legs. All right. We want to make sure that this is completely dry before we move on to erasing the lines and then painting more on top of it. So I'm just going to get it dried off with my blow dryer, and then we'll move on to our next colors. Okay, so now I can just go over this whole thing gently and get rid of my pencil lines. Anything that's hanging out, go ahead and just clear away. Okay, so the next color that we're going to paint is a beautiful blend from a dark blue to a light blue in the wings. We're gonna fill up the whole wing shape and paint over these lines. What you wanna have ready is some paper towel. So I'm gonna make like a smaller little, pointed bit of paper towel that I can use to kind of wipe away some of the extra paint on top of the lines. I'll show you about that in just a minute. And then we're going to mix our two blues so that we can do the blend smoothly and as quickly as possible before the dark blue dries. We're gonna blend the light blue into it. So I'll show you what colors we're gonna make. So let's get some white, and we're gonna go for kind of a medium to medium dark blue. Now this you don't have to match this exactly and perfectly. We just want 2 shades of blue, one darker, one lighter. That looks like a pretty good shade for the darker shade. And now I'm gonna steal some of this white over here since I don't think I'm gonna use it for that one. And we'll just bring it over and use the blue that's on my brush to make a lighter shade. And I want them different enough so that when they blend together, we can see a dark color and then a blend and then the lighter color. So I'm gonna bring a bit more white over. There, that looks good. Okay, I'm gonna rinse out my brush so that I am just using the dark blue to start out. And I am gonna make this kind of watery. So I wanna make sure that the handle of my brush is dry so that there aren't water droplets like running down onto my paper as I paint. But I do wanna dip into the water and get my bristles wet and kind of make a soupy, inky consistency paint here. I think I'll make a little bit more. We'll dissolve some more of the paint into it. And this is going to give us a beautiful kind of wash in the wings, like making a very wet sort of color. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and just swirl my brush like this, where I'm like wringing it out to get out extra, and just have it be saturated there. And I'm gonna paint about halfway through the wing, or maybe a little less than half, and then start my blend. So watch this first one, and then you'll get an idea of what we're doing, and then you can follow along. So I'm gonna just fill in over all the lines except for the outside lines. And stop about there. And then I'm gonna just dab off, grab some water. I'm gonna swirl it into my lighter blue and then just kind of wiggle them together. And then, it doesn't have to be perfect, and then just continue it along all the way to the end here. And then while these 2 blues are still wet, I'm gonna take my paper towel and just kind of start dabbing and brushing a little bit with it and bring back the lines that we drew. You can press as hard as you need to kind of find those lines again. There we go. Whoops, I got out of the lines a little bit over here. I wonder if I can erase a bit. A little bit I can. There we go. And I'm just going to kind of dab, dab, dab. And now it's kind of a soft, hazy blend from dark to light. And the lines that we have in the wings are softened now. Like they're not as intense of a color. And also the leg has been painted over. And so it's like we're getting the effect that we're looking through the wing at the leg, which is exactly what we want. So I'm going to maybe fold this just to get a clean space. And that was really opaque, the paint that I just put down. So I think I'm gonna wet it a little bit more. I think that was a little more opaque than I would ideally have it. So let's water this one down even more and see if we can get a bit more of a see-through feeling. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this next one. That's a little less opaque. That's better. I can kind of see the leg through it. Okay, so I'm gonna blend to there, kind of dab out, get some water in my brush and get that lighter blue. Kind of just wiggle the 2 together and then continue painting. There, I think this one is a little thinner, so it's feeling a bit more successful, like we're getting a bit more of a transparent look to the paint. There we go. So now I haven't even dabbed with the paper towel and we can see the lines through it. That's what we're looking for. Okay, but I'm gonna sort of dab on that leg to make sure we can still see the leg. And everything else looks really good, so I'm just gonna leave it. There we go, that looks good. All right, so I'm gonna rinse out and go back to my dark blue. That really watery blue, it did the trick. So now we're gonna do this wing up here. I'm gonna kind of do the third of the wing that's closest to the body. Right about there, and dab out, grab some water, get our light blue and wiggle, wiggle, wiggle between the two to kind of blend them together, and then just keep painting forward. This one, yes. Okay, I think I found the perfect amount of moisture of water in that paint, because it's really just letting that dark paint show through it without me having to wipe too much. And I just dabbed out my brush and I'm almost using it like a sponge, because now the bristles are soaking up paint. And I can kind of just go back over and soak up a little bit of that paint right there. Okay, let's go ahead and do our next wing. And we do have to work quickly because the paint will start soaking into the paper and kind of drying out. So we gotta do our blend as quick as possible there. And don't worry if your blends turn out differently. I feel like these all match relatively well. But if one of your blends is different than another, don't worry about it, because dragonflies really have kind of this shimmery quality to their wings where they're not all appearing exactly the same. And so some difference in the look and color of the wings is totally fine. It'll look fine. Okay, so now that we have our blends, I'm gonna dry it again so that we can continue on with our next layer. Okay, I got that mostly dry. The paper was starting to curl a little bit when it got warm, so I'm gonna just stop there. It's slightly damp. So while we wait for the wings to dry completely, we're gonna go ahead and paint the patterns in the body. So I'm gonna mix up a dark blue, kind of like this one. Actually, I bet I could use some off the back. That didn't get super wet, and maybe we'll just add a bit more blue to it. There we go. It's just white and dark blue. And I'm gonna paint just real generally. We're not gonna get really intense with the details here. I'm gonna just paint a curved line to kind of show that the eyes are here. So kind of like two little commas. And then I'm gonna do also a little half circle mark right there. We're not gonna get too intense about the anatomy of the head and the body. So I'll make just like a little dashing mark to kind of show that the head is transitioning into the neck or into the abdomen, I think. Okay, so now we're gonna make a light yellowy green for the markings on the rest of the dragonfly. So I'm gonna get yellow and then just a tiny, tiny touch of green. Phthalo green is really strong. So just a little bit, and we'll tint our yellow. We're not gonna copy the colors exactly in this one. There are dragonflies that have pretty, really colorful markings that are orange and yellow and red and all these different things. So I'm gonna copy the shape of the markings, the basics of them at least, and we're gonna make them this kind of yellowy green, like a chartreuse green color, because I feel like that would be real nice and zingy up against the cooler colors that we have in the body and the wings. Okay, so real basic now. We're not going to get intense about the details. So we're gonna do two little curving lines that are opposite each other here, curving away from the middle. And then on the body, the next section of the body, I think we'll do like a dash. I'm just really basics, we can't get too intense about this or we'll be getting in there with our tiny little brush and painting detail after detail, which is too much for this project. So we'll do a little dot to show the transition to the next section. And then there are just basically like symmetrical little sections where we're just going to make like a little oval mark in the tail. And they just keep going all the way down. And I'm not counting them. I think there's technically supposed to be 8, but I am just doing enough to fill up the body. And if we end up at 8 or more than 8, I'm not sweating it. You can tell I'm not doing intense anatomical accuracy here. Let's just count for fun. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. All right, and then I'm just gonna dip straight into the side of my white right here, and I think we'll make a little white dot in between each of these sections. There's a little white in there. So just like a little dot as we go down. And I think I'm gonna do maybe a little white on top of these dots. There. I think that's perfect. That gives just a little bit of detailing to the body and makes them look shimmery and beautiful. Okay, I'm gonna just check the wings to make sure that they are dry with the back of my hand so I don't smudge all this paint on them. They feel good. So we are going to move on to the part we've all been waiting for, the beautiful shimmery little marks in the wings. So I'm gonna switch over. Let's see, which picture do I wanna do? Yes, here. Look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? Look at all those beautiful, they look like strings of jewels, just super beautiful. So we're gonna do our version of those little shimmers that are hitting all of those little sections in the wings. So I'm gonna just grab some white and bring it somewhere that feels like it's gonna be safe and not mix with other colors. And I'm gonna use the tip of my brush and I'm gonna do just little curving rows of dots and dashes to show some of these shimmering little sections. Now, the general rule of thumb I follow when I'm painting is that when there are tiny details like this, or like, you know, the whiskers on a cat or a dog or anything that where there's like, feels like there's a million of them in real life, we're not painting every single one we see. We're just hinting at them and our eye understands that there's way more there than we're even painting. If you try to paint every single section, it just gets kind of crazy, visually crazy looking. So we're gonna just hint by doing some, but not every single little square we're looking at. So the first thing we're gonna do is just make a little row of them following this curved oval shape. So I'm just gonna make little dashes going down. And I think we'll make another little row kind of following that, kind of curving down there. I'm gonna go back for paint. And the nice thing is, as the white dries, it will look a little less intensely white because it's starting to go just a little bit see-through. And so there will be a bit of variety of light and dark, even within the white, which I think will help it look really pretty. Okay, we'll make another little row that curves down there. And then I think I'm just gonna follow this other line that we did. And really just with the room that we have available, I'm just gonna make some little dashes there and some little dashes there. And maybe just a few little dots. Really little dots up here. Just for a few little sparkles. There we go. And then what I want to do is make some more marks right along this bottom edge to kind of emphasize that shimmery lower edge of the wing. So I'm going to go back and get some paint, and I'm just going to kind of go right along the bottom edge, kind of make some little outward marks like that and build up a bit more thickness and shimmer. I think that's really pretty. Okay, let's go ahead and follow that same basic idea in the lower wing. So we're going to follow that first line that we did of that oval, and then do another one that sort of branches off and curves down a little bit away from it. Another little shape. Maybe some little shimmers right along here. And then we'll go ahead and do, maybe since this is a pretty big area, I'll do one more little row kind of coming down. And then we'll just put on some shimmers. It doesn't have to even go solid. You could kind of make it like a broken line. And I think that's really pretty because it just feels like the light is playing on them and you're seeing more shimmer in certain areas and a little less in other areas. It's trying to have it feel less exact in pattern, like a perfect pattern, and a little bit more organic and natural with your strokes is good. And if the white as it dries starts to look like it's not bright enough, we can go over a few of our marks and kind of make them pop again. And that again will help with the two-tone shimmery sort of a feel. Okay, let's go ahead. I'm making sure the abdomen or the thorax is dry enough for me to set my hand on. I think it is. And we're just kind of copying the same sort of idea on this side, but it doesn't have to be, of course, a perfect copy of it. Just a similar idea. I'm going to rinse my brush. I feel like it's getting a little globby. When the paint starts drying in your brush after a while of using it, it gets kind of thick and unwieldy feeling. So I like to just rinse and then get some new paint kind of worked into my brush bristles. And then it feels like it glides a lot easier that way. Yeah, that feels better. Okay, I think I'm done with the white dots because if I keep adding more and more, all of the pretty blue wash is gonna get more and more covered up. So I wanna make sure there's enough space that kind of breathe that beautiful color in between our white marks. So I think we are all finished. Thanks so much for joining me. If you found this tutorial helpful, then I would love for you to check out my online painting classes. You can click the link down in the description to see more and watch some of my course trailers. I have 3 beginner-friendly, self-paced online painting classes that focus in on nature subjects like water lilies, flowers, and birds, and they're all acrylic based. So if you want to learn more about techniques for using your acrylics, I would love to have you join me in one of those classes. All right, I will see you next time, and until then, happy painting.